Dr. Karan Singh, we're doing this interview to celebrate 75 years in public life. That must be like a record, right? I can't think of anybody anywhere in the world who's spent 75 years in public life. Nor can I think of anyone. You are, I just discovered, and I'm slightly shocked, still 93. And you're still active, you're still doing interviews. So that is quite
Lord Shiva's grace, I think it's all divine grace, all this, I say.
Now, many people know you as a minister, as a politician, as a great scholar, but not that many people are aware of what a remarkable life you've led. Your father handed over the state of Kashmir to you, and he was the Maharaja of Kashmir when you were 18.
18.
Yes. You then continued to serve Kashmir in various capacities. Your designations changed, but unusually, and Kashmir was going through a very difficult period at that time.
Jammu and Kashmir.
I'm so sorry. This is the thing about Dr. Karan Singh. It's always Jammu and Kashmir. But Jammu and Kashmir were going through a difficult time, if you will forgive my saying so. Kashmir more than Jammu during that period.
Better known.
And you were young, but you were considered quite dynamic. And you became very close to Panditji, to Pandit Nehru, who called you Tiger and was very fond of you and told many people, I think he even wrote what hopes he had of you. I can't think of very many people alive today who actually interacted with Panditji. So tell me what you remember.
You see, Panditji was my mentor.
Yes.
I grew up reading his books, even in Doon School. The Discovery of India, the autobiography.
Yeah.
Those are the books that inspired me to want to become part of the new India.
Right.
And not to remain in the backwaters of a feudal situation.
Right.
I think that was where my real came, the first thrust came. And I met him for the first time in 1949.
Okay.
When I was in my plaster patch, I was in my bed. In Jammu, he came to see my father, and he left. I said, I would like to meet him. So next time, Daddy brought him into my room and said, Tiger is your great admirer.
How old were you then?
I was 17.
Okay.
16 plus. So, but by the time I came back from America after my treatment, from 1949 till 1964, those 15 years, he was so kind to me, so, he gave me his blessings, as it were, and gave me his guidance. I remember having breakfast with him and saying, Tiger, remember always, whenever you confront a situation, think of the historical perspective.
Yeah.
Don't only think of that event. Realize that it is part of the event. So this sort of thing over a breakfast. I mean, what a privilege.
What a privilege, yeah.
To have directly the discovery of India, and he used to come to Kashmir. He loved Kashmir.
Yeah.
So therefore we used to meet quite frequently. And then I was his house guest once or twice in Teen Murti. So he was, yes, you're quite right. And his correspondence with me, as you know, has been published by Penguin.
Which shows the regard he had for you and the hopes he had for you. Now, I find this extraordinary, if you forgive my saying so, because Panditji was a man who, in the popular imagination, stood against feudalism, wanted to create a new India. You were the son of the Maharaja of Kashmir. You were born, I think, at the Martinez Hotel in Cannes.
In Cannes, quite right. How clever you to remember.
So, you had this Riviera type lifestyle. Your father was a great bon vivant. He loved champagne. He was
polo, and
polo. He was like a Maharaja. And yet, around a very crucial time in our history, when there's a struggle after our independence for Kashmir's identity, you choose deliberately to turn your back on the feudal society you were born into, to turn your back, as it were, on being a Maharaja without turning your back on Jammu and Kashmir. It was a difficult balance, wasn't it?
It was definitely difficult. And it was particularly difficult because of the fact that Panditji and Jawaharlal Nehru shared a hearty dislike of each other.
Yes, I was being very discreet. I was about to say that they did not like each other.
Well, let me put it mildly.
Yeah.
So, and particularly then when he realized that I was going to follow Jawaharlalji's path, not his, he was obviously not pleased.
Yeah.
And the first time it was all right when he appointed me regent. Even then he was unhappy. But then when I accepted the Sadr Riyasat, That was when he got really upset.
I'm sorry, just for younger viewers, what does
I'll tell
Sadr
you.
Riyasat mean
I'll tell
actually?
you. You see, we'd gone to the United Nations unnecessarily, I feel.
Yeah.
And we were stuck there, and there was some talk of Jammu and Kashmir having a separate First of all, there was talk of a plebiscite.
Yeah.
Then after that, there was a constituent assembly for J&K to frame the constitution.
Its own constitution.
Its
right?
own constitution. I signed that into being as head of the state, and I signed the constitution when it was finally completed. So I'm one of the few people, single person who signed a document into the constitution,
Right.
apart from other things. So in that constitution, the head of state was supposed to be elected by the MLAs. Not appointed by the government, elected by the MLAs and then recognized by the president. So that office was then known as the Sadr-e-Riyasat
Okay.
instead of governor or Maharaja. So Sadr-e-Riyasat, I was elected in 1952 for the first
By
time.
the MLAs. By the MLAs in Jammu and Kashmir.
They waited till I was 21. Usually the minimum age is 35, but they put it down to 21.
Just to make you.
Just to make me. And then when I was 21, I was elected Sadr-e-Riyasat and re-elected then 3 times. Then that changed into governor.
Yeah.
So I was 18 years regent, Sadr-e-Riyasat governor, all the same job but different nomenclatures.
But apart from the fact that your father was unhappy about your growing friendship with Jawaharlal Nehru, there were other problems. Your father and Sheikh Abdullah, it is fair to say, did not like each other very much.
Not at all. You see, that was where the whole thing began, because obviously Sheikh Abdullah was somebody close to Jawaharlal Nehru.
Right.
He was chairman of the States People's Conference. And once we were committed to a plebiscite, then who was going to win the plebiscite for India? Sheikh Abdullah.
Right.
Because he headed the largest political party, National Conference. And so he had the whip hand. He was the one who said to my father that I cannot win the plebiscite if Maharaja Hari Singh is in the state. And not only him, you must ask Maharani Tara Devi to leave also, because she is more dangerous than him.
Oh, really?
He sits in his court in his palace surrounded by courtiers. She goes from refugee camp to refugee. Luckily my mother was not a princess. She was from a small village in Kangra.
Okay.
उन्होंने गरीबी देखी हुई थी. So she used to go to the refugees, कभी खाना लाना कब. She said, so both had to leave. Can you imagine?
What did this do to you, just as a boy? Have both your parents exiled away from the state your father had ruled, where she was a popular Maharani?
She was a problem, and they went in separate directions. He went to Bombay, she went to Kasauli, I came to J&K. There were just 3 people in the family. It was a total breakup of all of them. You know, it must have had some impact upon me, although I must say, looking back, I was able to cope with the situation. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because my father made no secret of the fact that he was unhappy, and that would later on reflect in his will. So I said, you know, whatever, I did not want to spend the rest of my life running horses in Bombay, although I love Bombay like you do.
Yeah.
Daddy was a great patron of the turf, you know, he loved that.
He was pretty much your caricature Maharaja, if you'll
He
forgive
was
this.
Maharaja,
Yeah.
and he was but a highly intelligent man. Unfortunately, towards the end of his rule, this whole thing collapsed. And I said, I've got to go this side. So it was a gamble. I mean, they said that you're going to be thrown out also, like within 6 months and that sort of thing, he said. And after I accepted Sadr-e-Riyasat, the first time I went to Jammu, a sea of black flags from the airport to the palace. Because
Why?
the Jammu people were very, very upset with Sheikh Abdullah.
Yeah.
For you know, this is Jammu and Kashmir, remember. So Bapuji was Jammu and Sheikh Abdullah was Kashmir in a way.
Yeah.
Because Jammu is our ancestral home, the Dogra home. So people were very, very upset. That was not a very pleasant moment. But after that next year, after I had dismissed Sheikh Abdullah, then when I went to Jammu, they said, हाँ
They were
आपने बड़ा अच्छा
cheering
किया.
into
मैंने
the.
कहा वो काले झंडे कहाँ है वो दिखाओ मुझे. So it was
It's.
a difficult
I
period.
mean, you touched on this. You were your Dogras, your family. You were loyal base in Jammu. Many attempts were made in the Kashmir Valley to stir up secessionist sentiment, to say that Maharaja Hari Singh, who signed the instrument of accession, had no business doing it, etc. Though, of course, Sheikh Abdullah at that stage had supported him. You chose to try and become popular and succeeded with the people of the valley, even though there was, so we don't talk about it, an obvious communal divide. How did you bridge that?
Well, for one thing, to begin with, I had goodwill of Sheikh Abdullah also.
Yeah. Well, you were better than your father as far
And
as he
he
was
was
concerned.
the unquestioned leader of Kashmir.
Yeah.
He was a remarkable man, by the way. He was my opponent in some ways politically, but he was outstanding as a Kashmiri leader. He was very impressive to look at, 6'6"
Yeah.
and a half, and with his cap he was almost 7 feet and sort of huge character. But he remained a Kashmiri leader.
Yeah.
He was never able to extend his charisma to the non-Kashmiri areas. And always remember, Veer, Jammu Kashmir state, which was founded by my ancestor in 1846, was Jammu, Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan, and Ladakh Kargil.
Yeah.
It was a huge composite state. It wasn't only Kashmir. Kashmir was better known of the units. So that is why, to begin with, Sheikh Abdullah was friendly, and people knew that I had never done anything against the Kashmiris. So there was a lot of goodwill. But ultimately, when I fought elections, I had to fight them from Jammu.
Yeah.
Like, the real,
But you fought and won, what, four times?
4 times I won from Uzumpur.
It's not bad. The same constituency, yeah? All the way through. Now, accounts from that period, historical accounts that I've read, describe you as having been a fairly introverted, bookish boy. You'd had a problem with your health, with your leg
Yes.
when you were young, who'd seen his parents taken away or sent away, and therefore looked to Panditji almost as a mentor and a father figure. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, I think.
Yeah.
Because after all, when I had the support of such a great man, that gave me the courage and the strength to do what I did.
The other side, I mean, despite all these political problems and all of that, you also decided to follow an academic route. How did that happen?
That is, we were married when I was 19 and my wife was 13.
Right?
So we grew up together. So हमने कहा करें, what do we do? So I said, let me restart my studies. I had done my intermediate, which, as you know, was in those days. So one of the professors came and said, instead of just studying casually, why don't you study for a BA?
Which sounds okay now, but in those days for a Maharaja it was not normal.
So I said, yes, I'll study for a BA. And I'll take political science, economics, and history and English. So I started studying. And I ultimately did my graduation, another unique thing, from the university of which I was chancellor.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
I
Dr.
remember reading.
Radhakrishnan came that day to give me, I couldn't give myself the degree. He came to give me the degree. He was another man, another mentor. He was my intellectual mentor, whereas Panditji was my political mentor, as it were. So Radhakrishnan came. Then I wanted to study on. मुझे शौक हो गया पढ़ने का. Maybe I was good at school also. I got a first division, although I was 2 years younger than most boys in my class. I got a first
This is
division.
at Doon School.
I was always Doon School. I was always a good student. But then I said I'll study on, but I said I can't do my MA from here. People will say अपनी university से करता जा रहा. I have to come to Delhi.
And you did an MA in what?
MA in political science. But very interestingly, just is a detail that might interest you. How do I come? I can't attend classes. I was Sadr Riyasat.
Yeah.
The Delhi University amended its statute to provide that if a chancellor of a sister university wanted to take an examination, he could be exempted from attending classes, but has to come to take the examination.
So you came to Delhi
I
just for
came
the...
ready for the exams.
Is there a recorded, I mean, I can't think of any record in history where the chancellor of a university, the head of state of a large place like Jammu and Kashmir, actually studied as an undergraduate, got a degree from his own university, then went on to become MA while still fulfilling his constitutional
It,
functions?
it was unusual, let me say.
Wasn't
But
it?
I always enjoyed it. And even after my MA, I wasn't satisfied. I said, I'm going to do my PhD.
And you chose the
And
subject?
you see, what happened by that time, my interest had begun to shift from politics to philosophy.
Yeah.
Now, I couldn't change to philosophy, so I chose Sri Aurobindo as a person in a way who covers both.
Yeah.
But I did the work not on his philosophy, the political thought of Sri Aurobindo, 1893 when he came back from England to 1910 when he left Pondicherry, that period.
That's fairly obscure for a guy from Kashmir to do, no?
And the Banga Bhanga, you know, all the great leaders and
Yeah.
all, and Alipur conspiracy case, and
You did all of that.
I did all of that.
So where did this interest in Hindu philosophy come from?
That came, you see, traditionally my mother was, whenever I used to go and see her, she would take me to her puja room and usually Charnamat vagara there. That's when I began seeing all those photographs of the Hindu gods and goddesses. But philosophically, I started with Plato.
Okay.
Oddly enough, Plato's Symposium, beautiful small text. But then Dr. Radhakrishnan said, Karan Singh, the Upanishads, that is the key. Always remember. I shifted to, once I started the Upanishads, I just fell in love with them. I'm still in them. I'm still in the Upanishads because they are so rich, you know. They are the supreme text of Hinduism. Even the Bhagavad Gita is a derivative text.
Oh, really?
It's not
We talk about it a bit later, but you were doing all this when you were head of state of a Muslim majority state, right? There had been communal tensions. There was a constant, regular claim that Kashmir should go to Pakistan because of the Muslim
a
majority.
lot of tension.
And yet, you maintained still the support of people in the valley while becoming a great Hindu philosopher. There was no problem doing that?
I didn't face any problem. We used to go to our the Muslim shrines also.
Yeah.
मखदूम साहब जाते थे हाजिरी भरने, बाबा ऋषि जाते थे, Chirare Sharif used to. So I used to go to pray in various shrines. In those days, and that was noticed by people. And I must say, to be fair to them, they also, I think, appreciated the fact that I was studying and that I was, really interested in this thing. But when that, if you remember the Moe Muqaddas, when that hair of the Prophet
The hair of the
disappeared,
Prophet was
and there was that uproar
was
and all.
64 or something, wasn't it?
And
63, 64.
I remember I was in Delhi, I flew in there, and I said to my cousin Naseeb, I said, look, if the police get the slightest hint that I want to go to Hazratwal, they're not going to let me. So let's get into a car. I got into his car, drove to Hazratwal, bang in the middle. I said, let me take the chance. I didn't know what sort of reception I was going to get. You would be surprised. The moment I got out, हमारा राजा आ गया, हमारा राजा आ गया, आप दुआ कीजिए, खुदा आपकी सुनता है. So, despite all decades of anti-Dogra philosophy, which Sheikh Abdullah propagated, the people of Kashmir still loved it.
Which was a remarkable feat when you think back on it, wasn't it? In a way?
It was quite unusual.
Because the history of Kashmir is very unusual because Sheikh Abdullah, who was a traditional enemy of your family, then became, in the late 80s and 90s, fairly unpopular in the valley. His tomb had to be guarded.
It's still guarded.
And ironically, the people guarding it then were the Dogra regiment, which is odd, isn't it?
But it's very ungrateful of the Kashmiris to what one man did for the Kashmiris.
I agree.
Nobody else could have ever done. Yeah. From a sort of a class which was despised and all, he brought them up, gave them self-confidence. So he was a remarkable man for the Kashmiris.
Okay. Let's move away slightly from the Kashmiri politics aspect and talk about the other unusual thing of your career. Well, younger people may not remember this, but until Mrs. Gandhi abolished privy purses and then eventually de-recognized the Maharajas, Maharajas in India had a special position. They were called Your Highness by law. They had their own flags. They had red number plates on their cars. They were exempt from income tax. They were given privy purses by the central government. You turned your back on all of this, and rather than be a 21 gun salute state, Kashmir?
21 is
Yes.
one of the
So
five
rather
21
being
guns.
being one of the top Maharajas, you said, I want to be known as Karan Singh.
You see,
How did that happen?
I'll tell you how that happened. My father passed away in 1961. We happened to be abroad at the time, then we came back. And after that, I got a letter from the government of India, a formal letter, recognizing me as the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir. But I thought that it would not be appropriate for me, as I was in public life now, to go around calling myself as a Maharaja. This is 1961, mind you. Before I joined Mrs. Gandhi, I joined in 67.
Yeah.
This is in 61. I was head of state in J&K.
Right.
So I said, no. It so happened within about a month of my father's passing away, I got my doctorate.
Yep.
So I said, no, I'm not going to use Maharaja. Please call me Dr. Karan Singh.
And that's true to this day, that even people around you call you Dr. Saab, not Maharaj Saab.
No, is this Dr. Saab, Dr. Karan Singh? That was a key thing also. And that was in line with my thinking.
But you were the first Maharaj of any consequence to do that.
Yes.
And then you joined Mrs. Gandhi. You became a minister in her government who was so anti Maharajas and princes that she ultimately de-recognized them. Was that a difficult period for you?
It was a little difficult, yes, because, you know, in 1969 when she, looking back really, I don't think it was a big deal to have done that. It needn't have done that for 10 or 15 crores, broken all those treaties.
And it was also a promise given by the Union of India that we went back
Yes,
on.
it wasn't. But anyhow, she did it. And when she did it, I was in a dilemma again.
Yeah.
Earlier dilemma, another dilemma. I said, no, I've got to stick with her. I can't. That Bhanu Pratap Singh, you remember, he was the deputy minister. He resigned.
I don't
He was
remember.
Bhanu Pratap Singh, a junior deputy minister from some small state in Bihar. But I said, no, I stayed on. In fact, I spoke in parliament on that.
I was going to make that point, that you actually turned against your own class in parliament.
Kya karoon? I had to do that with my father. I had to do that with this whole class. Because
But you were pretty much a villain, right? If the Chamber of Princes had a dartboard, they would have thrown darts at you. They hated you.
They called it the Concord for India, Concord of Princes. But they were very upset, and in fact,
they saw it as a betrayal.
They saw it as a betrayal, definitely.
Was that difficult? I mean, turning your back on all these people?
Not really. Well, it was difficult. Yes, it was, because obviously I had a lot of friends from the old, not so many, but because these princes used to come to Kashmir, I used to have to meet them as a boy, and also I knew a lot of people in Jodhpur and Jaipur, and a lot of rishtedaris.
I was going to say that. You chaps are all related to each other also.
So many relations. But I said, no, you see, once I've taken a road, I must be consistent. I can't sort of waffle on the way. So that is again, that's the second time I had the big dilemma in my life. The first time was when the Sadri Riyasat thing came. Second time when the purses were abolished. So I said, no. I put all my money into Haritara Charitable Trust in the name of my parents and give it up.
It's also fair to say that you never really dipped into the Maharaja type finances. You didn't take much. You gave away most of it into trusts, as you say. In fact, and for a long time, you made your living by renting out your hotel to the Oberois.
That's true.
Yeah, your palace.
In fact, I didn't take a penny's salary when I was a minister.
Yeah, right.
10 years I didn't take any salary. I lived in this house. I didn't take a government house. And all the assignments that I did, whether it was ICCR or whether it was Orwell Foundation, whatever, they all had salaries. But I didn't take any salary from the government. The only time I had to take salary was when I was in America. Because I
When
didn't
you were
have
ambassador.
ambassador. I didn't have any foreign exchange.
Yeah, fair
So
enough.
I had to take the salary at that time.
But you were also, I think these people don't realize this, you were the first Maharaja to turn his palace into a hotel
Yes.
and to move out. I mean,
Which everybody has now done. That time it was
yeah.
something, it was revolutionary.
Why would you do that? Why did you do that?
Because it was lying empty, this huge building.
Yeah.
And originally, as you will read, my father was very angry. I wrote to him, I said, can I donate this to the Jammu and Kashmir University? He said,
Really?
no, you cannot. They've already sick. So then I said, what to do with it? Then Rai Bahadur Oberoi, the old man, if you remember,
Yeah.
he knew Bapuji also. So he came to me one day, मैंने कहा ठीक है आप बापूजी से जाके वो carpets वगैरह ले आइए सारे, because everything had been rolled up and taken away. Then he went there. It was a good decision, because you're quite right. We lived, that was our source of income.
That's right.
When the Privy was stopped, we don't have any factories, we don't have any businesses. You know,
No, you're nothing except for that.
we had that. That's America. And I started living. I continue to live in Karan Mahal, which is now an absolutely beautiful royal resort, as Vikram and Chitra call it.
Yes, I've
You
heard
must
many
come
good
and
things
stay
about
for a
it.
while.
I've heard many good things about it. When you joined politics, while you had this role in Jammu and Kashmir, you went into national politics and you had a national role. I remember you as being the most successful tourism and civil aviation
Yes, that was my
minister
first,
in our history. I don't know how long you did that job.
5 years.
5 years. And you set the foundations for Air India, for Indian tourism, for so much of what was
By
to
getting
follow.
a lot of the private sector in.
I was going to say
I
that.
got people like Ramesh Thapar in, I got Jason Dakunya in, a lot of people.
Ramesh Thapar actually was your choice to head ITDC when you founded it, wasn't it?
Yes, ITDC.
Yes. So you chose very unusual people.
Unusual people. Yeah. And that was what worked, because had I merely gone through the government apparatus, they will never change. One thing I have found in my life, to change a government department or decision is impossible. Because therefore, you have to bring in new blood.
Yeah.
And I did that. I also did the wildlife. Let me tell you the story of that.
I didn't know that.
The story is that Indira Ji once said to me, will you take over the Indian Board for Wildlife? I said, yes, fine, I will. Maharaja Mysore was the chairman, but he was not very mobile, as you know.
So that's one way of putting it, yes. Yeah.
And fine, very fine man, mind you. He was the pianist and all that, right about. So in the first meeting, just hello, I had my committee and all. This, we had quite a lot of interesting people on the committee. And the second meeting, I realized that the national animal was the lion. Do you know that up till that date, the national animal in India was the lion?
I didn't know
because of these lion sums, the
because the Ashoka
Sarnath, Ashoka lions. So I said, this is ridiculous. Lions are found only in one part of India, and the tiger is ubiquitous from Himachal down to Kerala and from one side to the other side, Bengal and beyond. So we passed a resolution urging the Prime Minister to change the national animal from the lion to the tiger.
Which year was this? Which year was
it? I think I was still minister. It must have been, I think, in the late 60s.
Okay.
And I took that to her. She agreed. So I was personally responsible for changing the name of the lion to the tiger.
I had no idea.
And my enemies say I did it because my pet name was Tiger. But that's
I was going to make that point.
But that was an important. And then we did Project Tiger.
Yeah, which actually changed the face for wildlife.
If we have 3,000 tigers today, it's because of that Project Tiger.
Now, you were in those days a minister in Indira Gandhi's government. She's, in retrospect, history has judged her very kindly in some respects and very uncharitably in others. What was your experience of her?
You see, she was, first of all, the concept that she was a great dictator and wouldn't let anybody speak, that is total nonsense.
Really?
She was perfectly this thing. In fact, my seat used to come opposite her in the parliament when we met. And sometimes I had to quietly say, Indra ji, aage chale. I mean, she just let people go on talking all the time. किसी को रोकती नहीं थी वो.
That's interesting. That's not her image.
People think, वो तो बड़ी भारी, not at all. So as far as her public persona in cabinet is concerned, I can guarantee that she was not a dictator.
Okay.
In party matters, also at one stage she was out by all these bigger leaders and all. But there she finally cut everybody out and assumed full authority.
But when the Congress split, you went with her.
The first split.
The first, yeah, the important one.
The important one,
the
Morarji Bhai and his group. Broke.
When the so-called Congress or the syndicate were left
that
here.
I went with her, supported her. And then she was, then you see, I was with her for 10 years. I saw her finest hour and her darkest hour.
You saw the emergency.
I saw both. I saw the finest hour, Bangladesh.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't remember Bangladesh liberation.
Yeah.
At that time was for us really almost like a second liberation war.
It was, yeah.
You can't imagine the ecstasy there was in the country. And she was responsible for that.
Yes.
The refugees came in, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs. 1 million refugees came in. And then she waited and waited and then struck at the right moment.
Yeah.
That was her finest hour.
Yes.
And her darkest hour was the emergency.
Now,
Which I only want to say, may I say something about the emergency? That Allahabad court judgment,
yeah,
frankly, to unseat a prime minister on the basis of some letter from Yashpal Kapoor not having reached Haksar or some technicality like that,
yeah,
did seem very odd. If a major baat hoti, you could say that. But for a small technicality...
I have no problem with that. But the response to that is not to lock up the opposition, censor the press.
I'm not just... If I'm starting with that.
Yeah.
The moment that happened, all her old insecurities came in. Don't you remember? Growing up, she was very insecure.
Yeah.
Because her mother had problems and the aunts and all.
Yeah.
So all her insecurities came back. And therefore, she overreacted and started having these huge rallies and all. And the opposition also found it the opportunity. They said, this is the only way we can get her out.
Yeah.
We can't defeat her at the polls. So they also started their full mobilization under JP. And Morarji Bhai's fast and Gujarat and so on.
I remember that.
But ultimately, she took this decision. Knock on my door here in this room, 6:30 one day in the morning, 8 baje cabinet meeting. I said, 8 baje cabinet? No. Kapde upar jaldi pehne mein. Dead silence in the room. Everybody sitting there. She announced, the emergency has been introduced and we've elected all the leaders. Dead silence. Sardar Swan Singh did ask one question later on something else, not on the thing. But there was nobody who would speak. Now that was another difficult period for me, yet again.
Yeah.
So I went off with a drive with K.C. Pants, who was the only person of my age with whom I could be open. Yeah. All the others were 20 years older than me.
Right.
So Raja and I went for a drive. We said, ab kya kare? She's been very good to us, to both of us. Now, if we leave her at this stage, first of all, we'll be letting her down. Secondly, let's face it, we'll be spending the nights in
jail. Yeah.
So I'm sorry. That's also, So I said, so ultimately we said, nahi, hum rahenge. So we stuck with her.
You also saw the rise of Sanjay Gandhi during that period.
He was, you see, what happened was, let me tell you, the first group of people when she introduced the emergency was quite different. That was Siddharth Shankar Ray, D.K. Barua,
yeah.
HR, who was the...
Gokhale,
HR Gokhale. And
Mohan Kumaramangalam to an extent.
Mohan wasn't there. No? He died.
Had he died already?
Yes.
Rajni Patel.
That man...
Rajni Patel in Bombay.
No, Devgant Barua.
Oh.
Devgant Barua, Siddharth Shankar Ray,
yeah.
HR Gokhale, and those are the people who advised her constitutionally. Pretty soon, Sanjay moved into the... And once he moved in, all these elderly and senior people and able people were thrown out. And he brought in his own group. Om Mehta, Chaudhry Bansilal was his great supporter.
Dhawan
V.C.
became
Shukla.
important.
V.C. Shukla and so on. Jagmohan.
Yeah.
So the whole situation changed.
How did it feel as a minister, having dealt in a vaguely cabinet form of government, Mrs. Gandhi being a leader of a cabinet, dealing with a situation where there was Sanjay who had no political experience, suddenly bringing in all his pals and taking over the country?
And not only that, I was health minister.
Yeah.
I had laid down certain targets for sterilization, very reasonable targets. He took it upon himself. You see, this is how history works. He came out with a 4-point program. She had a 20-point program. सब कहने लगे 420, 420. So, what those odd things. So, as a fifth thing, unfortunately, he took up population.
Yeah.
And he started unilaterally raising. I never raised, because the Shah Commission looked into it very carefully, I never ever raised the target. I wrote letters to Chief Minister saying, I'm getting reports that coercion is being used, please be careful. Chithiye sab record mein hai. But he went haywire. And all the North Indian chief ministers thought that he is the rising force, which he was. इसको खुश करने का एक ही तरीका है कि targets बढ़ा दो. That is where the forced sterilization took place. That is why the Congress was knocked out in the North.
Yeah, and they did okay in the South. It was really the North that...
It was only the North, because they were the chief ministers.
You then appeared before the Shah Commission.
I did.
And many people in Mrs. Gandhi's camp, because you told the truth and you said this was not my program, saw it as a betrayal, that you hadn't stood by her and you had disowned Sanjay. Did you feel that way?
You see, in my, I looked into my text again. I didn't say a word against the Prime Minister.
No.
Ever.
Yes, that I remember.
I could have easily said the Prime Minister, no, I didn't mention it at all. I said an extra constitutional center of authority developed, as a result of which all these things happened.
So basically you blamed Sanjay.
I blamed Sanjay, he was the one to blame.
How did, he's absolutely right. How did Mrs. Gandhi react to that? Because till that point, you'd been not only a friend of Mrs. Gandhi, but a friend of the Nehrus for like decades.
I know. That again was a difficult decision. I didn't know. She must have been hurt.
I would imagine so.
She must have been hurt, definitely. But Sanjay Gandhi was he's very dashing and but very intemperate. He wasn't a balanced person.
He was the thug, basically. He was the thug, basically. Let's not beat around the bush.
Yes, and he had taken over, and the way it was going, I don't think he ever wanted elections.
No, I don't think he did.
We understood, we may be wrong, we understood that Mrs. Gandhi announced the elections without consulting Sanjay. Whether you believe it or not. Because Sanjay did not at all. Bansilal said to me, election ki baat bhul jao ji tusi, election kaun karayega, koi lod nahi.
Well, I interviewed Dhawan, and he said that they were not keen on elections.
Not at all.
But P.N. Dhar and various people sent her reports saying she would win if an election was held.
P.N. Dhar was that group who
wanted
elections.
Yeah, he was like a decent person.
I wanted elections, K.C. Pant wanted elections.
And according to Dhawan, all of you manipulated her into believing she would win. And this poor woman then called an election and lost.
Well, I don't know how that's true. But somebody in the Intelligence Bureau also told her
he blamed the DIB, who sent her a false report saying she would win.
Thank goodness.
Well, thank you.
She had the election.
Now, in that period afterwards, the Congress split, you were on the other side.
Then they split again, second time.
At that time, you were not on her side.
I didn't go with her, neither did Subramaniam,
neither did any of the
Chauhan, neither did
any of the old guard or the decent people.
No.
You then, during that period when Mrs. Gandhi comes back, you formed a Hindu organization called the Virat Hindu Sabha. Was that right?
Virat Hindu Samaj.
So I remember that.
1982.
So what made you do that? Because people said he's gone over to the other side now.
That's what people thought. But they later on discovered that there was a village called Meenakshipuram.
Yeah. which is where the conversions took place.
जो रातों रात मुसलमान हो गए,
I remember
whole
that.
village converted.
Yeah.
That created a big sensation. And I was by that time a Vedantist. I was studying the Upanishads. I said, why? What is wrong with Hinduism? Why is this happening? So I wanted to do something to do that. So I set up the Virat Hindu Samaj. The RSS had their Vishwa Hindu Parishad. That was a different...
Which caused a lot of confusion.
People thought I was went to the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, which is not true. I set up my own organization. And we started having these huge public meetings.
I remember.
Delhi and Patna and Lucknow and Jodhpur, huge meetings. But one thing became clear to me during the course of these meetings, it was the RSS that was supporting it. Without that, we could not have done it. I did not have that sort of organization. Where would I get 1 million people to Delhi?
I mean, that was always the allegation. You're not saying this openly. No. That without your realizing it,
yes,
the RSS...
That's without my realizing. I realized then after the thing that it was the RSS. Then let me tell you something which perhaps you did not know. One day, I think after the second or third big meeting, 2 people came to call on me from the BJP. Atal Bihari Vajpayee and L.K. Advani.
Right.
In that room where we were sitting. Dr. Karan Singh, हम चाहते हैं आप हमारी पार्टी में आइए. So मैंने कहा थैंक यू वेरी मच, आपने कष्ट किया, लेकिन ऐसा है कि जम्मू कश्मीर के ऊपर आपके विचार अलग हैं, हमारे अलग हैं, तो मैं आ नहीं पाऊंगा. थैंक यू वेरी मच. That was when I realized that the RSS was going to withdraw support. So I quietly sat back and let the thing drift. That organization technically is still there somewhere.
Okay.
But then I lost interest in it. I realized that it was there.
The reason I ask you is we're now talking about the late 1970s, early 1980s when you formed this. A few years later, 85, 86 really, the VHP starts the Ayodhya agitation. Yes. The BJP then takes it over and India has never been the same again. I remember asking you at that time about the Ayodhya agitation. And I said, what do you find interesting about it? And you said many things, which I'm hoping you will say again. But you said, have you noticed how there is no place for Sita in the whole scheme of things? That they, except for the reference to Sita ki rasoi, it's a totally macho male agitation.
I said that to you.
You said that to me right there.
Yes.
And you were right.
It's true, because even their whole Nara was Jai Shri Ram, not Jai Sita Ram.
Right. They stopped that Siya Ram thing.
Stopped Siya Ram. And which showed that their whole attitude was a macro attitude, and it was very unfortunate that there were so many killings and all, and it was a terrible period. And then went through that terrible time when that Blue Star, when Mrs. Gandhi came back, then that Blue Star happened. That is, हमारे लिए तो the Darbar Sahib is as important as our own temples. हमारा परिवार ही वहीं से उठा. Master Gulab Singh, my ancestor, was in the service of Master Ranjit Singh. Right. उन्होंने ही उनको तिलक दिया था.
He was his general, right?
He was his general.
But I want to take you back to the Ayodhya agitation, because a new and more militant form of Hindu activism emerged after that, and out of that. You, as a scholar of Hinduism, as a person who'd founded a Hindu organization, were you surprised by it and worried by it?
No, I wasn't surprised, but I realized that there was, in fact, in the country, a lot of angst among the Hindus, general Hindus, that they have not really been treated properly, and that look at the way the Muslims desecrated all our temples and for so many 100 years, and we are not doing anything. So there was a certain, which they cashed in on.
Fair enough. The Hindu backlash, I accept, was there. But it was believed at the time that the Rajiv Gandhi government did not realize how deep the sentiment ran.
Nobody did.
And that, in a sense, this aggressive hard secularism of that era was a mistake, because it created a Hindu backlash which led to the present situation. Yes, you think that's fair?
Well, I don't know about hard secularism. Yes, a sort of reiteration of secularism. But secularism came to mean anti-Hinduism and pro-Muslim, which is not what it really meant.
Yeah.
But that's the way it was looked upon by the people. I kept going to my temples and all. I remember the first time I came here, अब तो आपको lecture नहीं करने चाहिए. मैंने कहा क्यों? मैं राज छोड़ के आया हूँ, धर्म छोड़ के तो नहीं आया हूँ. So I was the only person probably in her cabinet who would openly talk about the Upanishad and all.
Yeah.
And after that, I realized that nahin, now the country had gone definitely to the right. And it's still there. It still happened.
So when, because there was a Hindu backlash, and you're saying not entirely unjustified, and there was this rise in Hindutva forces, were you ever tempted to go over and join them?
No.
Because at that stage you were not really,
No.
you became an ambassador, but you weren't really
No,
involved.
no, I was quite clear that because somebody asked me, what is the difference between your Vedanta and between Hindutva? I said,
Yeah.
the difference is this, Vedanta is all-inclusive. The Upanishads do not leave anybody out, whether it is on gender or on anything. Whereas Hindutva is exclusive. They tend to leave out a huge section of India. That is the problem. And that, I think, is something which is unfortunate because the Muslims are a huge section.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true that it was partitioned and there are terrorists and all, but you still cannot sort of, as it were, cut out a whole section, which is what has happened. In this election and the last election, out of 300 MPs, the BJP, there is not a single Muslim anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's now become solidified, as it were, but it was there. It was waiting to happen.
You think?
It was waiting to happen. The only thing is, as long as Congress was strong and it didn't happen. The moment the Congress weakened,
it came out to the surface. Now, during this period in recent years, while we've had this division into secularists and Hindutvawalas, you've actually rejected that division. You've been a great Shiv Bhakt. You've talked about Hinduism. You've written about Hinduism. And it is believed that Rahul Gandhi's love of Lord Shiva comes from coming and seeing you and taking notes about sterilism. Is that accurate?
He did come on.
It's an awkward question, but I'll
No, he did come 2-3 times.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember on one occasion I gave him one of these Om Namah Shivaya bracelets that I wear. That is, remember when he said, I'm a Shiv Bhakta.
That's right.
So that is all. But he was genuinely interested, you know. Yeah. He'd ask me questions about Buddhism and Hinduism and what is the difference between the Atman in both and so on. He showed genuine interest at one stage. But a long time ago, when he stopped seeing me, I realized that
he's moved on.
He's gone on his own.
There's one. I've called you in print the finest president we never had. There was a stage when you very nearly became president. Tell us what happened.
I'll tell you the story. Sure. Sonia ji said to me, मैंने 2 नाम भेजे हैं. भेजे meaning we were 140 seats only. Yeah. Dependent on the left front had about 100 seats. So there was some committee that had been formed. Sonia ji said, मैंने 2 नाम भेजे. I knew I wasn't her first preference.
You weren't?
No.
Okay.
I don't think I should mention the person who was the first person anyhow. But
it's too late to stop now. You might as well tell us who was the first preference.
He's still alive.
So good. He'll be happy that he was. Who was it?
Shivraj Patil.
Okay. I know that, but I wanted you to say it. Go on. As you've now admitted, what we already know, that the first choice was, Sonia Gandhi's first choice was Shivraj Patil. You were the second choice. And she sent this to some UPA committee.
UPA committee. It was a combined committee of the UPA. And so what I'm told by very reliable sources, first of all, Shivraj's name came.
Yeah.
It was dismissed with a very rude remark by one of the members. I'm not going to record.
Okay.
Then my name came. I said, yes, he's well educated, he's done well and all. But you know, we're a socialist country. How can we elect a Maharaja as president or Maharaja's son as president?
That was the CPM and Prakash.
That did it. That was
and Prakash Karat.
A.B. Bardhan
and
D. Raja.
And Raja as well. Okay,
D.
CPI. It's
Raja,
not even
AP. But my friend was not there, Shashi
Sitaram
Tharoor.
was not there.
He was out. He was in South America or somewhere. But I'm not sure whether Karat was in the meeting or not, but A.B. Bardhan was there and D. Raja was there.
So basically, they didn't want to do it because you were a Maharaja or the son of a Maharaja. So isn't it ironic that when you were in a position to take the highest office in the land, the Maharaja factor, which you spent your life in a way running away from and saying, I'm not a Maharaja, came back to haunt you?
Relentlessly.
Yeah, isn't it? It's awkward, no? It's
There
odd.
it is, what is to be done, doesn't matter. Then somebody said, why don't we get a woman?
Yeah.
And they looked around, they said, there's a governor in Rajasthan. And Bardhan had been with her in the legislative council in Maharashtra.
Okay.
Bardhan is a Pravasi Bengali settled in Maharashtra. He said, वो बहुत अच्छी है.
So one Patil got the job, the
One
Lord
part
Shivraj
got the
Patil.
job. That is what happened. Anyhow, I have no regrets of that, frankly.
I think we all have regrets. You'd be a great president. No?
I may have enjoyed being a president, but
Would you have done things very differently if you were president?
I don't know what I would have done as president. But well, it was an opportunity. It doesn't matter. You can't get everything. I mean, I got such a lot of good breaks and all, so you can't expect.
No, I think it's fine not to become president. It's the highest office in the land if you don't deserve it. But not to become president because you were born into a Maharaja's
That
family.
I think is unfair.
That is unfair. No?
And Buddha was the son of a Maharaja, for God's sake.
That's a good parallel. Not a modest parallel, but a good one. Okay, so we've now come pretty much the present day. You are 93, you said?
94 in March.
94 in March. You're still, as anybody says, lucid, energetic, etc. When you look back at the India of 1947 and you look at the India of today, do you feel that we lived up to the hopes you had then, or do you feel a degree of disappointment that somewhere we've taken the wrong turn?
Well, in many ways, we've done remarkably well. I think, for example, in science and technology, the White Revolution, they are the people who really, heroes of India.
Yeah.
The Green Revolution,
Yeah.
the fact that we used to live from ship to mouth, we are now exporting, we are putting rockets into the air. And that was all started, by the way, by Jawaharlal Nehru.
Yes, it was.
Whatever they may say now, the foundations were laid at that time. So we have done a lot, and there's no doubt the abject poverty that used to be visible earlier is not now visible, at least in these parts.
Yeah.
Maybe in some parts of Bihar or Odisha, I'm not sure. So there has been a change, no doubt about it. And the greatest change has been the thirst for education. Now, many of my staff, they are illiterate, or they haven't been to school, both. But their children, koi BCom kar raha hai, koi BA kar raha hai. So everybody wants to educate their children.
Yeah.
The thirst for education is something very important, I think, and it's a major change. The other change, of course, is that even in 47, the relations between Hindus and Muslims were because it was just after the partition. But we thought we'd got over that, lekin wo phir aa gayi hai. That schism in society has begun again. That is a cause for some worry. Because I don't think in the long run that will help India. Because India needs to be inclusive.
Yeah.
So I don't want to over-dramatize that, but the fact is that it would be better if we were able to. Now, you don't have to go back to the Nehruvian secularism. But if you can just be fair to all communities, that's about all that's required. The courts have stepped in and have done a lot of good work. Then we've had changes in our laws. For example, old Victorian laws, like that 377, ridiculous laws like that have been scrapped at last. Should have been scrapped 50 years earlier. So, the point is we have made a lot of progress. And
on the subject of laws, Article 370, on the subject
Article 370, of course, that was the obvious culmination of the BJP. To be fair to them, they had that in their manifesto for 50 years.
Yes. This is nobody believed them.
Nobody said they'd ever do it, but when they got there, they actually did it. whatever way they did, the Supreme Court has put their imprimatur on it. So maybe you see, maybe in a way it is clarified situation, because there is constant khatsat, how much autonomy, how much of there was this, always this going on and on and on talk. So they've cleared that. Ladakh always wanted a union territory, they've got it.
Yeah.
Now they're not satisfied, that's a different matter.
But that's
But
politics.
Jammu and Kashmir are still linked indissolubly one to the other. These two, we have what is left of the state.
If you look at the progress of Hinduism and the way in which it was divorced from politics in the years of Panditji and the way it has increasingly entered the political sphere, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it depends what sort of Hinduism. I have written books.
Hindutva.
I have written books on Hinduism. My
Yeah,
latest book
I'm,
was, as you know,
I'm clarifying that Hindutva.
my latest book was Glimpses of Hinduism,
Yeah.
the Eternal Religion,
Yeah.
Sanatana Dharma. So, yes, I think that Hinduism should stick to some of its universal values. Very important.
Including inclusiveness? Inclusiveness?
Inclusivism and Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hriddeshe Tishtati. And the Gita says that the Lord resides in the heart of all beings. And the Upanishads always say, I am this man, I am that woman, I am this boy, I am that girl, I am that old man also tottering along with his stick. I am born with my face in all directions. And this is the Brahman. So the Brahman cannot make a distinction between one individual and the other. So it's important that Hinduism becomes more. The Muslims also have to move. They cannot keep getting stuck in whatever their Muslim board is and all, which is very backward looking and very anti-women.
Yes.
And after all, so they both sides have to move a bit.
But the business about Muslims moving has been true since 1947. We wanted reform within the community. The stuff about Hindutva is new. Right? It's the last 15 years, what we're seeing now.
Sorry?
The stuff about Hindutva is new. It's the last 15 years. Hinduism was never perceived in this way until about a decade and a half.
It has been radicalized, shall we say.
Is that a good thing?
Well, not necessarily a good thing, but it has happened, so we have to deal with it.
And how do we deal with it?
We deal with it by trying to propagate the Vedantic ideas. That's what we must do.
Do you actually believe that these champions of Hinduism, in the Hindutva sense, have read the Vedas or the Upanishads, or they even understand?
I can't say. I doubt if they've read the Upanishads. They must have read the Gita. Gita is an important text. And it can be interpreted in different ways. Gandhiji even called it a gospel of peace, or it's all about war, for God's sake. But, so you can do it. And Tilak's Gita Rahasya is a very basic book, which has influenced the RSS and that their thinking. But the Upanishads, I doubt if they've got up to. You see,
if you had actually, last question, if you had during the time you started the Virat Hindu organization, if you had said yes to Vajpayee and to Advani when they came to offer you a position in their party, your life would have been very different, wouldn't it?
Different, yes, but they are also very disciplined. You see, Vijayaraja Scindia was the woman who really ran the whole to give finance. So what did they do to her? Nothing. Made her a vice president.
That's true. I hadn't thought of it that way, yeah.
They never did it. So I would have then put my future into the hands of the people who ran the BJP. And that I was not prepared to do. Having sort of grown up under Panditji's tutelage and having been a member of the Indira Gandhi cabinet, I couldn't now, at that stage, I was only 51, 52, I wasn't all that old. I didn't say couldn't change my mind. I was very grateful to them for having come, but I said, I'm sorry, I can't.
So no regrets?
And I have no regrets.
No regrets at all?
No, not at all. I have no regrets for the presidency or for anything. By God's grace, you see, I am a Shiva Bhakta, frankly.
Yeah.
And I believe that I have been blessed by so many people and with so much that I shouldn't be craving for anything. This is my time to, again, try and give back as far as I can. I try to give back all my life, but now particularly I feel that I should become an elder statesman, as it were. It sounds terrible.
I know.
I don't look like an elder statesman.
No, you don't. Yeah, I think
I
there's
hope I
a
don't sound
contrast between your years of age and the way you look. But that's life.
But
Doc-
that's God's grace. I think that's all
Yeah,
I
no.
can say. I've
I
been
think
very
it's
fortunate.
been a remarkable life, and I really
I've been
enjoyed
very
talking about
fortunate,
it.
very fortunate.
Oh, you've made your own future. It isn't just fortune. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed
Thank you,
talking to
Vir.
Thanks.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.